For today, in the name of freedom, we take the battle to them.
Hello and welcome to my review of Mufasa, the Lion King. I know I am like 3 months late with this, but I never had the chance to watch this movie, which really sucks because I love The Lion King. The Lion King is one of my favorite films of all time. It's tied with Coco for my favorite animated film of all time, and you can imagine how excited I was for the remake that was in 2019. But despite what the 2019 version of me said, which I did upload that video and I sound like a small child, but I was overwhelmingly positive in that video. I think, I don't remember, it was 6 years ago. But um, it was a very lifeless remake. All the animals had this dead, stone-faced expression on their faces, and it just felt lifeless. But of course, I know the animated movie, I know the dialogue, I can recite the entire film for you if I want. So, of course, I noticed the little dialogue changes, like Scar saying things, like, I wouldn't dream of challenging you again. Things like that, small little details. But this movie was one I honestly heard of, like, way after it was announced, and I was really interested to see what they were going to do here because this is an original story, something that Disney has really been lacking in recent years. But I was mainly interested to see it because of Transformers 1, a movie which came out like 2 months before, or 3 months before this one, and it told basically the same story. The story of two quote unquote brothers who, are just so close, it's unbelievable, and then they go, and have a falling out. Of course, Transformers 1 had, it had to make Orion and D16 go from best friends to sworn enemies. And that movie just did it flawlessly. Now, you could say that it's bias, that, of course, I prefer the Transformers one, but I would need you to know that I have loved The Lion King way longer than I've loved Transformers. So, it's not really bias. And the main thing that I had with this movie going into it was the criticism that they didn't make Scar and Mufasa biological brothers, when that is a huge part of why Scar is such a diabolical and, beloved villain, is he killed his own brother, not a stray that his mother took in, that he befriended. No, it's his brother. And I still stand by that. But now, having seen Mufasa, I will say it was decent. It's nowhere near bad. It's not bad. Trust me. The people who say that this movie is bad, it's terrible, it sucks, just because it came out on the same day as Sonic 3 and Sonic 3 was infinitely better, they're just overreacting, those people. I think that Mufasa is a perfectly fine movie, especially as a family film. It's not overly dramatic like the third act of Transformers 1, which, man, that would have been cool. But that one, Transformers 1, has such a ridiculous tonal shift, from the comedic, light-hearted first half. And then that second half is just holy shit. Things just got real. With Mufasa, it kind of remains the same tone throughout the movie. And Scar's turn from Taka into, what he becomes, which is Scar, feels very half-assed. And before anyone says, oh, well, the movie's called Mufasa the Lion King, it's not telling the story about Mufasa and Scar falling apart. It's just telling Mufasa's story. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You need to include Scar in the story. Just because Mufasa is the title character, Scar is just as important to Mufasa's story as Mufasa. I didn't also, like, obviously I could kind of understand it, but I know I'm going to make a lot of comparisons to Transformers 1, but I didn't buy into their friendship, into their brotherhood. Like how I bought, D16 and Orion Paxes from Transformers 1. They, you could tell, were genuine friends and basically brothers. But with Mufasa, Taka and Mufasa just seem so different from one another that they just don't fit well together. And I also don't like the idea of Mufasa being the one who was the stray when it was Taka who was meant to be a king, and Mufasa stole that from him. Mufasa stole that, and he stole Sarabi. And by the way, that is a huge positive I will give this movie. Is even though Scar's, downfall was really poorly done in my opinion, I really loved one line that Sarabi said, and obviously this is up to interpretation. Maybe I interpreted way worse than other people, or way better depending on your perspective. But in the mountains, when Mufasa is awake and Sarabi is like following him and things, she's saying like, "Oh, you're the one that saved me. I know it's you." And she's talking to Mufasa about his destiny. And of course, your destiny, that's something that you live for. It's basically the entire reason for you to be alive is your destiny. That's ultimately what your life amounts to. And she tells Mufasa a line which really, really hit me, and that was Mufasa telling him. I forgot Mufasa telling him. What the fuck am I saying? Mufasa was talking about Taka, and then Sarabi says, and his destiny was to save you. Which, can you imagine being Taka in that situation? Hearing Sarabi, he loves Sarabi, and just hearing her say that ultimate is essentially the only reason Taka is alive, the only reason why he exists was to save Mufasa that day. That was ridiculous. I loved that line. And another huge positive I will give this movie is the expressions of the animals. Everyone walking out of this movie, whether they think it looked good or not, they can all say that the animals are way more expressive in this movie. You can see when they're smiling, you can see when they're sad, and it was so good to see, because I think one scene, I mean, of course it was the entire film, but one scene in the 2019 movie which was really, really affected and basically entirely ruined by the lack of emotion in the animals' faces was Mufasa's death. Simba, when he shouted no, in the original you could see that look of fear in his eyes, in his face. And then in the remake, he just looks like he's roaring. It looks really, really terrible. And especially when he's crying, his face looks the same. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm talking about the 2019 movie, talking about Mufasa. The animals are way more expressive. And, of course, I'm happy about it. But now that begs the question, why are we still doing it in live action? Quote unquote, live action. And the reason why I'm saying that is if you don't want to do it in 2D animation, fine. Because of course that'll, tie it in with that'll make people think it's tied to the original Lion King, which, do not touch that movie. Scar and Mufasa were biological brothers. Shut the fuck up. But then just do 3D animation. Do it like Tangled, how Tangled looks. Why are we doing this kind of desaturated look? And of course, I know obviously that Taka is the desaturated, more grey looking lion as opposed to Mufasa, who's more vibrant, more orange. But to most people, they will look very similar. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But yeah, the movie just didn't really have that weight. It didn't feel like it hit me the way something like Transformers 1 did. And I don't know. I guess I didn't really buy into the relationship between Mufasa and Scar that much, which is why by the ending, I don't really care that they fell out. So I guess that's why. But of course, the reason why Scar kind of got betrayed, well, betrayed Mufasa, is the main thing being that Mufasa stole Sarabi from Scar, and that, I think, is something that I realistically should have seen coming had I known. I mean, even, had I known that that Sarabi was in this movie, I of course would have called it, in the beginning. But I think that that being the thing that draws them apart, which granted makes complete sense, it is heavily implied in the original that happened. I don't know. It just kind of felt, I don't know, felt kind of half-assed in this movie, which I guess is a lot of stuff in this film. But I will say that the movie itself is beautiful. I really, really love the way it looks. But again, if it was animated, it could have been more colorful, could have been more saturated, everything like that. But I guess let's just talk about one thing, while we're talking about color, and that is the antagonists of the movie. So the main villain of the film is an albino, well, not an albino. I guess what do you call them? Snow lions or whatever. A white lion named Kiros, who is essentially wanting to be the king of everything. The one lion king, which, fair enough. That was an awesome line. And he is voiced by Mads Mikkelsen, and honestly, I can't really hear it. Maybe I'm just used to Mads Mikkelsen voicing, well, not voicing, but playing characters who speak kind of monotonously. But I really liked his voice here. But the character of Kiros just, I don't know. I I don't know. Like, it was cool having Disney finally have a villain who is just evil for the sake of being evil. Just no misunderstanding, none of that crap. He's just evil. I really enjoyed that. But there was just something about him that didn't feel as threatening. Of course, back to Transformers 1, Sentinel Prime is he's the most easy to hate character out of that entire franchise. He's despicable. You want to see him die. But with Kiros, it just kind of feels like a half baked attempt to make a villain who seems scary and intimidating, when really he kind of just did nothing throughout the movie. I feel like they could have made him have more of a presence, and even his other lions, the rest of his pride, which I do like that idea of how they are formed. I will admit that it was really cool, that they don't specify, they don't spell it out for you. It's like only the white lions. They say the lions who were hated by their pride because they're different. So they join Kiros's pride. I really, really like that. And ultimately, this is what causes this is what is the beginning of Scar's betrayal, is him going to Kiros and basically telling him, I'll lead you to Mufasa, he's the one that killed your son. So yeah, that's basically that. And even the final battle between Kiros and Mufasa, I think, could have been done a little bit better. But just speaking about that final battle, one thing that I genuinely thought they were going to do, and ever since I saw, actually no, ever since I saw the 2019 movie in the cinemas, I thought this. And them not doing this, I think, was possibly the stupidest thing they could have done. It was so, so dumb. Because, look, this movie, and I will admit this as a minor criticism, this movie references the original film a lot. Like, a lot. Because I can't remember the scene exactly, but there is a scene when young Mufasa is in trouble, and the camera does this really cool zoom in on his face. And you can tell that by the way that they zoomed in, it was clearly meant to be a reference to the zoom in on his face when he first sees the wildebeests running down the canyon in the original movie. Of course, when Taka and Mufasa first meet, you have Scar let's just call him Scar. You have Scar grabbing him, which obviously they redo that later. Which, like, guys, we get it. Okay, you didn't need to do it later. Like, I feel like they could have, I don't know, maybe play that up a little bit less, but I don't even think that makes sense grammatically. But you know what I'm trying to say. Um, and yeah, they copied a lot from the original movie. But one thing that the 2019 remake heavily implied is with just one word added to the script, and that being again. I said it at the beginning of the video. Is Scar adding the words again to saying, I would never dream of challenging you to Mufasa. To me, that just spelt out that Mufasa was the one that gave him his scar. And then we watch this movie, and that's not what happened. What? How does that make any sense? I would have bet all of my Transformers, all of my Funko Pops, I would have bet everything I own that Mufasa was the one who gave Scar his scar in this live action universe. And no, that's not what happened. Kiros was going to kill Mufasa, but then Taka jumped in the way and Kiros scratched him. That is what it's a terrible way of how he got his scar. Having Scar get his mark by saving Mufasa, I think that they already fumbled the bag there. But yeah, let's just, before I give my final thoughts, let us just, look at the different ways that Scar has gotten his scar. I don't know how many times I've said that sentence in this video. I'm so sorry. How many times, all the ways that he's gotten his scar throughout the different iterations. So, in the book, which was, intended to be in the same universe as the original movie, it was because of a buffalo, I think it was, a buffalo that scratched him with his horn. Then there's the lion guard, which, look, I'm going to bring this up later. I love the lion guard. I really, really do. But goddamn, that has possibly the worst explanation as to how he did, as to how he got it. Is a cobra jumped out and at such a weird angle managed to scratch his eye with one fang. Piss off. That was absolute rubbish. That is the one knock I will always give the Lion Guard, as much as I love that show. And then there is this universe where he got it by saving Mufasa and getting scratched by Kiros. I'm sorry. I don't like that. I don't like any of them. I really don't like them. And then, you get to the end of the movie when Taka actually shows his face again and Mufasa says, my brother will live, he won't be banished. He'll live here, but I will never say your name. I can't. And then in such a nonchalant fashion, Taka just says, then call me Scar. Like, what? What? That was something that should have been way bigger than it actually was. Just having him nonchalantly say, then call me Scar. Why? Just why, man? Especially when you compare it to Megatron in Transformers 1, you get that, of course, the intercutting between him and Prime, which, I will not, of course, include here because that's something very different. But you have the music building and building, and you see him slowly transform, and he goes, I am Megatron! And that echo, he screams it and it echoes. And then you get to Sky, and he's like, then call me Scar. It was like that. That is the definition of half-assed to me. That was just terrible. Although I will say that scene also has another positive, is that in that one scene, even though Taka's turn in the movie was very quick, I feel like his transformation was very sudden into Scar, but that scene, you can definitely tell by his demeanor, where he's like, thank you, Your Majesty. You can tell that is the petty, cowardly Scar that we know from the Lion King. That's what he should be. And I'm glad that they did that. It wasn't a gradual change at all. It wasn't a logical transformation. But yeah, it was just very sudden. But at least they got his character right at the end. So there was that. And then, of course, to end the movie, actually, before I get to that, I will bring up, I do think that the cutting to Timon, Pumbaa, Rafiki, and Kiara did get a bit much throughout the movie. I feel like you could have cut to them maybe twice, I think, because if anything, it just breaks, our attention because we are focused on what's happening between Mufasa and Taka. And then all that, immersion is ruined by just taking us to Rafiki and them, which I will also say this scene is where I noticed it. This movie has it not as bad as the 2019 movie, but the dialogue just moves so fast that they should have let it breathe. Like when Rafiki was explaining, how animals who are outcast by their prides and things like that, their herds, they could, want to inflict that pain upon others. That scene, Kiara says, "I'm glad that didn't happen to you, Rafiki." And then, like 1 second later, Rafiki goes, "Me too, Kiara." It's like it's so quick. It should have been like, I'm glad that didn't happen to you, Rafiki. Me too, Kiara. Me too, or whatever the dialogue was. Obviously not what I said, but whatever he did say, slow it down, break it up, let us feel their emotions. Don't It just sounds like people reading a script. It is very, very quick, and I don't know, I feel like they could have just slowed it down a little bit more so it feels like it's actual people talking and not just a text to speech. But anyway, yeah, so that's really where I kind of felt that. And then we get to the end of the movie where Simba is back because at the beginning of the movie, him and Nala went to the breeding grounds. They are back where we get to meet Kiara's little brother. And this is very, very interesting. Now, if this character is who I think it is, then if there is going to be another film in this franchise, which, you know what, honestly, just make it another one just to make this a trilogy. But if this character is who I think it is, I think they will be going with a different, more grounded approach as to, how they did this character previously. So, I have said it before that I love the Lion Guard. I love it. I love it. Could it be nostalgia? 100%. I loved that thing. I watched every single episode as it came out, and it feels like forever ago when little Chave was sitting on his bed watching The Lion Guard, and I really should rewatch that show, shouldn't I? But anyway, the main protagonist of that show is Kion, who is Kiara's little brother. And he, gets the ability of the roar of the elders, in which he is able to create a powerful roar, which is enhanced by, the elders of the Bridelands. And he creates the Lion Guard, a team which is meant to essentially just protect the Pride Lands. Now, of course, they are not going to do this in live action because that is a very kiddie concept. But I feel like they could do something like that, where they have Kion assemble a team, even if they want to do it of just lions, which is essentially, like their Avengers, their little team meant to protect the Pride Lands from intruders and things like that. So, yeah, I'm surprised they didn't name drop him. I'm surprised they didn't call him Kion, which, that would have been a little bit fan servicey, but something that would have been extremely welcome, especially to people like me who love the Lion God. Um, yeah, I don't think they should have called him Copa. Please, just don't call him Copa. Because for those of you who don't know, Copa is supposedly Simba's firstborn son who was killed by Zira. But anyway, Kion. Kion, I feel like if they do go down this route with him, make it not as ridiculous, because of course the whole thing of the Lion Guard and the Roar of the Elders is such a cool concept, but as a kids show. For this, make it do it better. And just one last thing I will add on about this movie is that it could be because I was partially drunk when I first started it. Don't worry. I watched the first 15 minutes and I was like, yeah, no, I need to go to bed. I'll watch it. I'll rewatch it tomorrow. But the first time I saw that beginning, like the little opening thing of the In Remembrance of James Earl Jones, I was in tears. That was so, so beautiful, especially with playing his audio of the like when he's talking to Simba under the stars, where he's like, the great kings of the past will be up there to guide you, and so will I. I was like, oh my god, that hit so hard, because of course James Earl Jones is Mufasa. You can't get anyone else to play Mufasa, and I'm so happy that I had the connection with him as this character, because of course a lot of people when they think of James Earl Jones thinks of Darth Vader. To me, he is Mufasa. He was always Mufasa and will always be Mufasa. You can never get an actor who can create a voice as theatrical and just amazing as his, to own a character like that. James Earl Jones was a legendary actor, and to see them, you know, at least have a little in remembrance of thing in this movie, it was just so, so heartbreaking, because damn, I always loved that man. So yeah, that was way longer than I expected. Those are just my general thoughts on Mufasa, the Lion King. Overall, a movie that I don't think you should avoid. I think that it is a perfectly fine movie, but this is Lion King we're talking about. Fine is not what we should be expecting. Especially when people might think that this is connected to the original. That is okay. To be fair, that is a very stupid conclusion to come to. But yeah, even as a prequel to that 2019 movie, I just feel like this one could have been done better. Especially with the songs. None of the songs were very catchy. And the villain song. Look, I'm all up for original songs, but Bye Bye just was not it. Um, I don't know. I don't know. None of the songs were very catchy. Mainly actually no, the beginning one, the opening song. I think it's called We Call It Melele. That one was really good. Apart from that, nah. What wasn't really feeling any of them. And one last complaint I will have is that they never even introduced the hyenas in this movie. How how? How do you not introduce Shenzi, Bonsai, and Ed? Even if it was just Shenzi. Even like, when Mufasa goes to the Pride Lands, or Milele, sorry, and he's walking towards where we know his mother is. The hyenas that like walk out of the way. I was genuinely like, oh, is that Shenzi? Nope. No. No. And that's something that I've always kind of wanted to know, is how Shenzi and Scar kind of got involved with each other, like the hyenas and Scar. I would have loved to have seen that. Something I actually would have loved to see in a Lion King prequel. And they just didn't give it to us. I don't know why. The one thing that a person actually wanted for this movie, and they didn't give it to me. So, I don't know. That I wouldn't say is a minor complaint. That is a big complaint from my part. Just like how Scar got his scar being so dumb. But yeah, overall, I think that Mufasa is fine. Probably a 6 out of 10. And yeah, I'm really interested to see where they will take this, because, of course, this is not going to be the last movie in this quote unquote live action franchise. So yeah, all I know is, even though I haven't seen it, this is definitely going to be better than the Snow Not So White movie that's out right now. Please let me know your thoughts on Mufasa the Lion King. Did you love this movie? Did you hate it? And just let me know your honest thoughts. Don't hold back. Be brutal. Praise this if you want to. And yeah, please, just anything and everything, let me know down in the comment section below. And yeah, I think that is pretty much it. So, if you did enjoy this video, then please leave a like, subscribe, and goodbye.